Did Mac Miller want Balloonerism released? Will we get any more albums of his? Let's explore the facts that may be able to give us some answers to both of those questions and more. It has been over 6 years since Mac Miller passed away, and in that time, his estate has unearthed or formally released a handful of projects. This was first seen with the album he was working on at the time of his death, Circles, then with Faces, and most recently with the EP, I Love Life Thank You, in 2022. That all changed in late 2024 when his newest project was announced at Camp Flog Gnaw, titled Balloonerism. Balloonerism has been floating around the depths of Mac Miller subreddits and SoundCloud for nearly a decade now, and was largely considered a lost album. Now that Balloonerism is out in the world and no longer just speculation though, it felt like the right time to take you from the project's early stages all the way to where it landed in January of this year. Balloonerism was created by Mac in 2014 during the same era as Faces, and he also recorded the majority of this album in the same home studio, which is well known as the Sanctuary or the Red Room. Faces wound up being officially released by Mac on SoundCloud, but it still didn't make its way to streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music until 2022. The project was most likely released that way because he was in the process of transitioning away from Rostrum Records, which is the label he was with for the release of projects including Kids and Blue Slide Park. During this time, he also started his own label, Remember Music, which was named after a friend he lost and distributed by Warner Records. Getting back on track though, while Faces always had a track list, the same can't be said for Balloonerism. Depending on who you ask, the final order of the songs almost always varied. Prior to the project's release, everybody had a different opinion as to what the correct order actually was, or what they thought it should be. One thing we know for sure though, is that both Colors and Shapes and Uber were expected to be on Balloonerism before they were remastered for Faces. Other songs including Funny Papers or Smile became fan-favorite unreleased singles and were always expected to be on the album, but it simply was never confirmed. Fans also expected a majority of the other songs that ended up on the project to be there, but a lot of theorized track lists included up to 30 songs. The final album ended up having only 14 though. It still has never been publicly confirmed that this is exactly what the track list Mac wanted it to be, so it's safe to assume that the project was tied together by Mac himself before he passed, by Josh Berg, who engineered the project and who we hear on Rick's piano, as well as by Mac's estate. Like I said before though, just about every song off of Balloonerism has been floating around for years. And before you start to get upset about another posthumous release, it is worth it to note that his estate has handled the entire process with nothing but grace and respect up until this point. Mac's family even shared in a statement that, quote, discussions concerning when Balloonerism should be released were had regularly, end quote. Mac always wanted to release the project, but it ended up being lower on the priority list compared to albums including Good AM and everything else that came after. That statement also shares that, quote, it is a project that was of great importance to Malcolm, to the extent that he even commissioned artwork for it, end quote. The story behind how he chose the art is another thing worth mentioning. The cover art that we see on the project today depicts a distorted face while a small shadowed figure hangs off the head like a balloon. The work itself was commissioned by an artist named Yesterday Night in 2014, around the same time that he first made the album. While the final artwork was recreated to have Mac's face, Yesterday Night previously painted this of himself in a series of family portraits. He publicly said that, quote, while painting this, I wanted to capture how funny I thought I looked, but looking deeper at it now, I was capturing how awkward cameras made me feel, end quote. When it comes to the music itself, the only pre-release single for the album was $5 Pony Rides, which released on January 9th, only a week or so before the whole album came out, on January 17th. At first glance, fans were confused about SZA being featured on the album with DJ's chord organ, because it wasn't widely known that they were even friends. But SZA is on the record saying that Mac was one of her first friends in LA, and Mac even went on to produce 2 songs for her 2014 project, Z, including Your and the Isaiah Rashad-assisted Warm Winds. Mac also performed those 2 songs with her at Red Bull Studios around the same time. Along with SZA, other collaborators included Taylor Graves, Josh Berg, who was the engineer for the whole album, and Thundercat, who worked across the whole project. Mac himself, though, handled the bulk of the production under his producer alias, Larry Fisherman. Balloonerism as a whole covers more dark topic matter, which can be heard on virtually every song on the album. Many things almost feel like they were spoken into existence about Mac's early death when it came to his lyrics, with one of the more notable ones off Balloonerism being when he says, quote, "I didn't think that anybody died on a Friday," end quote, which was on Funny Papers. This sadly came full circle as he passed away on September 7th, 2018, a Friday. We are also met with the second ever true streaming release of a song with Mac's other alias, Delusional Thomas, on the song Transformations. The track contains exactly the kind of eerie imagery and dark lyricism that you would expect from a Delusional Thomas track. Another pair of standouts in my own listening were Shangri-La and Rick's Piano, which can most likely be traced back to clips of Mac recording at Rick Rubin's studio, Shangri-La, around the same time. The album was also released with a short film that was inspired by the project, and it was directed by the same person who made the Colors and Shape music video in 2021. The short film is of course important to mention, but I want to stick to as much commentary as I can that directly pertains to the work that Mac himself had his hands on. With that said, Balloonerism is full of moments that fans have prayed to see on streaming for over a decade now, and it leaves me wondering how many more posthumous releases that we will get of Mac's as time gets further and further away from the day that we lost him. There are a number of projects that are still floating around of his, including Pink Slime and the collab album that he made with Madlib, fittingly called Madlib. Only time will tell, though, if either of these projects and more will ever be released officially. It's also a beautiful thing that Balloonerism was released on the same day as Circles did in 2020, but it also serves as a solemn reminder that it has been over 6 years now since we lost one of the brightest lights in music. There's nothing left for me to say at this point that you won't experience for yourself when pressing play, but I hope this deep dive shared some context on Mac's once lost album that has finally gotten to see the light of day. If you enjoyed this video, I did a ranking of Mac Miller's albums before Balloonerism came out a few months ago that may interest you, and I posted my first ever video essay earlier this month about Childish Gambino that you might like too. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.